Hey everyone, welcome back to the 11ish channel. It's been a few years. I've been gone, working hard, trying to make some money, and now we're back. We are a collective of self-starters looking for investment opportunities, looking for self-growth, and looking for anything that we might find interesting. In this conversation, we'll be talking with my good friend Ahmed. We're at this stage in our life where we have accumulated some wealth that we want to invest back into the community. A little bit of a VC fund, if you will. We want to bring that in front of you guys, the audience, so that you learn how investments are made, how risks are ideally avoided. We'll try to do our best, and we want to uplift the community with learnings, with investment opportunities, and with information that we might all find interesting. Let's get started. The beauty of this is that both of our product management related skills plus your background in data analytics and my background in engineering, I feel like I'm pretty confident that we have a good coverage for what a good feel for what a tech startup should be, both from like a ground floor level to where it should, like how it should set its goals, right?
I think this is actually a great topic for us to start with, especially just being able to understand, why should you pick one or the other? What are the trade-offs that come with one or the other? I can tell you from my own experience, just very quickly learning the trade-off of accepting money from other people and realizing, it's not always free. You're not always getting money to just throw at things and invest. And you see the headlines and it gets really exciting to see that there's plenty of startups getting all these money only to kind of realize down the road that you're like, I kind of wish I never did that.
As one of my much richer friend, John, who's also a frequent flyer on the 11 channel, the way he will say is getting money or spending money rather is buying time. So from that perspective, I think someone who is looking for funding should think about it as such. But as a starting point, being that startups have such a high probability of failure because there's a lot of trial and error and iterations involved, hard pivots. I'm of the perspective that a startup needs to be of a certain stage before they even look for seed funding. It shouldn't be just an idea.
I completely agree with that. I mean, even just looking at it from the product realm that we're coming from, we don't just go build solutions, right? Like we're spending the time to do the research, to understand the problem, understand the people. And before we spend, in a minute of time building anything or a dollar towards that thing, we've justified why that thing is worth building or why it's worth, solving that problem. When we're looking at how do we build a company from the ground up, a lot of times, did we validate it to begin with? I think something interesting I really learned over the last few years of trying to build my own company has been, as much as I've been entrenched in that world of product management and being very familiar with this framework, we tend to forget that if we don't validate this thing first, if we don't actually prove that there's a need to solve this problem, it doesn't matter how much money in the world you get, nobody's going to buy this thing if nobody has that problem. So I'm very much a big fan of the going through the trenches a little bit of the early days of bootstrapping this thing somewhat and validating that there is in fact a strong need for whatever it is that we believe needs to exist. And then, like you said, graduating to that next level of saying, I know now how to do this and scale it and grow it.
A lot of people talk about product managers, PMs as product managers, not project managers and program managers, right? We talk about product managers in general as baby CEOs in a company. And in many ways, that kind of functions as such in relations to a startup, because essentially an org is funding us to create a feature, a product, give an idea a chance. Unless you're in the tech industry, a lot of people don't know that a lot of ideas are tested and failed. And that's why a lot of PMs, if they're not built with that mentality, they hate it, right? You just going through stuff that never launched, as an example. And that could be an org problem. It could be your director's idea sucks, or it could be, you as an execution guy sucks, right? So in many ways, this is the same thing, right? Personally, I think the best time for someone to look for a seed funding really is that they already have a proof of concept that, or we call MVP, right? Minimum viable product, something that's already, like you've already pushed that into production. So you might have spent some of your own time to do this. You might have spent some of your own money to do this. And you see adoption. You see some adoption. You see, most importantly, you see repeatable adoption. If you can see a repeatable adoption, then there's a reason for you, the founder, to look for funds from someone like us. because then that's justifiable that you have something that actually has a potential to grow.
What you highlighted is something that I think a lot of us, especially coming from the product world, we tend to overlook, right? And generally, I mean, anybody that's looking at numbers tends to overlook, which is the fact that it's not just a matter of what can I get in the short term? How many can I get? 1,000 users today? That's awesome. But if none of them come back, you don't have something that is sustainable, right? You don't have something that can continue to grow. You haven't necessarily found that, in the product realm, what we call the aha moment, that I have really found the value and I'm going to keep coming back because that's what I'm looking for. And so that repeatable aspect of it, I think, is something that's not stressed enough.
I definitely think that building a prototype and having your surroundings testing it is phase one, like bare minimum. The next thing, the ideal thing really is to actually figure out how do you actually getting your product in front of strangers is super, super important before you look for funding. I think one of my favorite stories is about how Airbnb started. They had this product in front of people they knew, and they're like, why would anyone use this? Like, why would anyone want a stranger in their house, et cetera, et cetera, which from an instinct perspective, I think the same way. But then on the other hand, I'm thinking like, if this works, there's big money, but I don't want to be the one funder. I don't want to spend that money, right? And then they demonstrated in production that people do want to use this. People are willing to adopt both from the house side and the user side. And next thing you know, people just throw money at that problem.
It has that snowball effect.
Yeah.
That first user that comes in all of a sudden, and this goes back to what you were saying, right? Is it repeatable? When that first user comes in, are you building in the way for them to then share it with the other people that also have those problems? Because people we live in communities, right? So if I have a certain problem, more than likely people connected to me might, very likely have that similar problem. Am I making it easier for this individual to share this thing that I've built with other people? Or am I putting roadblocks in their way and, building user experience that really is not helping that situation? So I built my prototype. I have my surrounding circle that have tried it. I have, maybe I do have somebody I don't know that's testing it out or trying it out. But how do I know when I've hit that threshold that says, okay, I do have enough validation. Now I can go get seed funding, or maybe I should now go think about seed funding. And I'll use myself as an example of definitely what not to do. In the process of trying to build out ClearCasa a couple of years ago, I did in fact get my very first customer, and it was a B2B customer, and I thought I was on top of the world. I was like, hell yeah, that's it. I'm going to scale this thing. We're going to go huge. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, I very quickly learned, yes, they were paying me, and it was pretty cool to get paid that way, but they were not engaged in the way I needed them to be. All of a sudden, I was running into issues in there. It was serving a homeowners association. There was politics in the way. There's process. There's all these things, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, I myself didn't even want to serve that customer anymore, and now I'm back at square one after I take the step back and say, this is not at all what I want to do. When do we find the right sort of position to say, now I can go get seed funding, or I should go get seed funding?
Yeah, before I answer that question from my own perspective, I'd like to understand, how did you find that B2B in the first place?
Candidly, it was complete luck. I think I was part of some networking thing locally, and the person that I networked with just happened to be the president of an HOA, and then they connected me in. But I will say, I think the thing that I've definitely learned and that I am really bad at is that networking piece of, you never know who the heck you're going to talk to that's going to be able to connect you with somebody else, and next thing you know, there's your first customer. I think if you're founding a company, I think you don't have a choice. You have to get out there. Even if it's talking to people on forums, whatever it is, you have to get out there.
I absolutely agree with that perspective of getting yourself out there as many as possible. Just from a business opportunity standpoint, a partnership standpoint, all of them are valid. Even when you say something like you got lucky at a network opportunity and that's how you found the HOA, I think that in itself should be considered a cost, though. That's kind of where I'm getting at, right? How did you even find that event? Just if you can backtrack in terms of how much effort or cost in order for you to even be in front of that event to have this connection in the first place should be built into the cost of acquiring this business as a customer. And then you would have to think about, if I repeat this, right? What is the cost of repeating this process again? whether that's actually cost effective or you're actively losing money. And maybe you're in a stage where losing money doesn't matter because you're gonna eventually upsell. All of these things come into mind. Landing one customer does not make the case that you have a repeatable business, right? That's really ultimately I think you and I agree on. The other way to think about this actually, the later you'll seek funding, the less percentage you'll have to give up, right? So that's the other reason, right? If you can bootstrap, and then you're at like this block because you need a bigger network, or you had a block because you need a bigger funding to accelerate your growth, that's when you look for funding. But if you're looking for funding just because you're tired of doing this on your own, and you just don't have enough personal bandwidth, those are, frankly, in my opinion, two red flags to not fund a founder.
Something that I constantly struggled with, especially over the last few years, the idea that like I'm giving up control. And I think sort of from two fronts. On one, it's, I would say it's the funding piece. I don't want to give up control to this investor. I don't want to, now all of a sudden have to take orders from somebody else potentially. That was the whole reason why I left, working for somebody else. But the other piece is from the control aspect of it is, if I work with somebody, even a co-founder, I would say, if you're someone like me that struggles with, trying to do a million things all at once, you probably do need to give that control up, and it's going to be healthier for you. It just allows you to stay focused on the things that you want to do.
Yeah, when I was in my 20s, that's a very similar mindset. I want to do everything. I want to hold on to everything. I want to own everything. That's just not realistic. There's not a single person that really built an entire business by themselves, not even Zuckerberg, right? You can take it very far if you are like someone like Zuckerberg or Arnold, for that matter, where you haul ass because you're able to mentally and physically do three people's job. You'll take yourself a long way, and you're the type of personality that funders want to fund. But there's going to be a point where you need to scale up, and scaling up means you create a team as well. Do you have any thoughts in terms of the personality that you would look for someone you would fund?
I think, this is going to sound a little bit vague, but to me, I've always lived by this motto of figure it out, right? What you just described, this person that can do, these 3, 4, 5, whatever many skills that they can, it's, my opinion is because they figure it out, right? This is something that I've learned over and over and over, especially in the last few years of trying to do my own thing, is you will not know how to do most things, and you're going to have to figure it out anyways, right? Yeah. I still don't know how to do any software development. I got really lucky that AI came out, and it allowed me to start being able to build my own things. But even then, there's a learning curve, and it's going to hurt. It sucks, and you have to do it, right? You have to be able to figure those things out. And so for me, when I'm looking at, who do I want to work with? Does this person have initiative? Are they going to be able to look at something and say, I don't know anything about this, but we will figure it out together. We will go through the process, learn, test, as we were saying, we'll experiment, A/B test, do whatever has to be done to get to the other side of this challenge. It's the lack of that, the lack of being able to look at a challenge and say, let's go, I'll figure it out along the way, to me is a massive red flag. It's just, I do not want to work with this person because all I see is just a lack of initiative, a lack of the ability to say, I can do this, we can do this, especially if you're leading a team, by the way. Like, if you're a founder, that's a responsibility, right? Like you don't have the luxury of being, saying, oh, I don't know what to do. This ship is sinking. You are responsible for people putting bread on their table. And if you're just sitting there kind of with this shitty attitude, they're not going to be following you for much longer. And next thing you know, you're out on your own again.
That eternal optimism, I think, is a hard requirement for this kind of work. Being confident and frankly smart enough to be able to figure things out is super important. One of the things that really irritates me, especially when I used to be like this, that I'm like super aware of this, saying that you have the answer when you don't, that versus actually, I don't know, I'll figure that out. There's a huge difference between the two, I think it was my first interview with Microsoft back when in engineering, the guy, I don't even know why, but he asked me, if I want to build a high rise that's a mile high, how wide does the base need to be? And I just insisted that I know the answer. And in the meanwhile, I was Googling the shit out of it. And this is a live interview, right? So he knows I'm like struggling and probably trying to find an answer. But I'm like, the way I'm articulating it is as though I know the answer already, right? Like that to me is like a no go, right? Because if you work with a team, then people know you're a bullshitter, way bad, right? But if you're someone who can admit wrong, then people are sympathetic, and if you can show that you're able to figure it out, people will actively help you the whole way, you know. And if they're not, then they're assholes. They should be gone anyway, right? So ultimately, this is how you build a success or be a part of a successful team. Be a leader, really, that the type of leader that we're looking for.
I guess just to kind of recap, if I choose to bootstrap my company, I'm funding it. I'm the one, I might still have a day job, and I'm doing this on the side and out of my own pocket. If I get seed funding, I'm coming to somebody like you and saying, Steve, I have this really cool idea. I want to be able to grow it. I want to scale it. And to be able to do that, as we've mentioned, I should probably have some validation or some proof that this is something worth funding. Why should somebody give me money to grow this thing? That's where the separation between the seed funding and the bootstrapping would be.
That's right. And more specifically, what we're articulating is that you need to basically have bootstrapped before you look for seed funding. You need to have reached a stage in your idea where you have a minimum viable product that does something, that proves a concept, that shows value, worthwhile value, that someone, regardless of whether it's us or someone else, is worth exploring to grow your idea further, right? Your idea may not necessarily create monetary value, but this day and age, the currency is people. So if you are able to show that you're able to capture audiences and retain them, people will fund that. Like people like us will fund that, because monetizing it, that's later on anyway. That's not that big of a deal to figure out in the beginning, nor necessary. I think that concludes today's episode. Next time we'll tune in and either interview somebody or talk about maybe A/B testing or something like that on some of the projects that we're currently working on maybe. Sounds good?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thanks for your time. Catch you guys later.
Thank you.
How the fuck do I end this?